Hello, board game brothers and sisters. I'm Adam Singer, and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of all the board games launching on Kickstarter and Gamefound over the next week. If you're new here, we do this every single week, going over all the upcoming campaigns. If you want to stay up to date, this is the place to be. But before I get started, I do like to go over some news and announcements that I just found out about. And we did just get a launch date for the next game coming from IV Studios, and this game is called Brink, and I am very interested in this one because it is taking place in the Moonrakers universe, and it does also borrow the negotiation aspect from Moonrakers, but then applies it to a worker placement game. Moonrakers is a game that I really love, and it is a game that I will be adding to my collection. I do have a copy on the way, so naturally I'm really interested to see what this game does differently. But if you are interested to learn more about this one, I will be going into a lot more detail during the week of its launch, and this one will be launching on July 2nd. And if you want to hear of even more games launching in July, definitely go ahead and subscribe to Boardgame Co. because Alex and I do work together keeping track of all these upcoming campaigns. We got a bunch of games to look forward to in July, including Brink, like I just mentioned, but also DC Heroes United, and then also a new expansion for Kemet, and there's a bunch more that are coming down the line and a bunch more that we already do have tracked, and Alex will have you covered at the start of each month, letting you know of the heavy hitters for that month. Of course, Alex puts out a ton of other content as well, going into all sorts of playthroughs and reviews and previews, so if you want even more info on all these games, he'll definitely have you covered. And we actually have a bit of a lighter week this episode, which is a nice change for me. I think we've only got 12 games here to cover, but there's definitely some interesting ones, so let's check them out. And the first campaign we have launches on June 18th, and this one is called Tsukuyumi Full Moon Down, and this one is actually the 2.5 edition because it is making some small improvements on the second edition that was already previously released. This one is also my own personal pick of the week because the gameplay on this one is really streamlined and a lot of fun. And even though the game looks like quite a lot and there's quite a lot of content that you can add to this game and it does take up a lot of table space, the game is actually pretty easy to learn and play, and these new changes actually make that even easier. That being said, the game still offers quite a lot of depth and variability from game to game. This new version makes some small changes to the rules, the iconography, and even the components in order to create a more streamlined experience. The expansion rulebooks have also been consolidated with the main rulebooks so that you only have one rulebook to worry about, and they also added a first teach walkthrough to make playing the game for the first time go a lot faster. For anyone who does already own the game, there will be some new content and some new expansions as well, and they did partner with gamer trays to make storing your game a lot nicer, and there are some small balancing tweaks with some of the factions and some of the cards offered in the game. These are the kinds of changes that I really love to see, just making the game even easier to get to the table, and this is a game that already does have a 7.5, and actually has a 7.9 if I look at the original entry on BGG, which is a really great rating. And if you look into the rules on this one, I think you'll understand why, because this game looks like a ton of fun. This one is an area control game where players are going to be playing with asymmetric factions with their own special powers, their own combat cards, and their own unique units. Players are going to be gaining victory points by controlling different areas on the board, completing different missions, and completing their faction goals. Players do this over a series of rounds where they're going to be choosing an action card from their hand, and that's going to dictate the actions that they have access to over the entirety of that round. And this is where a lot of the elegance of the game really comes into play because all these action cards are actually double-sided, with one side of the card having the exact same set of actions for players to choose from, and then the opposite side being unique from every other card offered in the game. The round starts with each player choosing 2 actions to play from the non-unique side of that card, and players will be resolving their actions in initiative order, which is kept track of on this board here, but there are actions and different abilities that will allow you to manipulate this. Some of the basic actions will allow you to do things like draw and play different event cards, deploy and upgrade your various units, move units around to different areas of the board, or even take a hostile action which allows you to either fight enemies in a location that you're currently located at, and of course getting rid of the enemies there does make trying to control that area a lot easier, or instead you could just try to take control of that area anyway, whether or not there are enemies located at it. But no matter which option you decide to go with, you're going to be playing a combat card from your hand in order to enact those actions. And these use a sort of I split you choose mechanism where each of the cards is going to allow you to perform some sort of ability. Like I said, either trying to annihilate your opponent or just trying to take control of the land they're on. But when you do that, it's going to be giving your opponent some options because you're going to have to hand them the card that you just played. And then they're going to be choosing one of the several options on the lower half of that card. I really love this because not only does this offer a really unique take on combat for an area control game, but it also leans into the elegance of this game by doing so much and providing different options from just a single card. But getting back to the action cards here, keep in mind that I've only just explained the basic side of the card, and now I'll let you know how the unique side of the card works. And this is going to be broken into a few different colors, and these happen in sequential order, with each of those colors being associated with the phase within the round, and the actions in each color indicate the actions that you'll be able to perform in that specific phase. As I said before, this side of the card is unique across all the cards offered in the game, so you can see that there's going to be quite a lot of variety and quite a lot of different strategies that you can take. And what's really neat here is that some of the cards might actually only feature one color on that side of the card, which means that it's only going to be granting you actions for that one specific phase. Of course, this will be a much more powerful action, so it'll be up to you to decide if that's a path that you want to take. And interesting decisions like that, whether they pay off or end up in catastrophe, are what make games like this so much fun. And if you are interested to learn more, I will have it linked in the description below. And of course, you can click to get notified. And also launching on June 18th, we have another really interesting one, and this one is called Unstoppable. And this one is the next game coming from John D. Clare, and if you're familiar with his work, you might not be surprised that this is a game that also does feature card crafting, and if you're not familiar with that, it's basically where you're going to be combining cards into a sleeve with certain aspects of those cards stacking on top of each other in order to give you a way to upgrade your cards. This is a really great mechanism to combine with deck building because the next time you see that card come up in your deck, it's going to be a little bit different and a little bit more powerful than the last time you had the chance to use it. And this one is also a deck building game, and it does feature a unique way that it does the deck building. I'll get back to that in a second here. But this one is also a cooperative game for 1 to 2 players, and it is also our Discord pick of the week. This is a game where players are going to be playing as different superheroes, fighting different threats, defeating them for new action cards, and then eventually fighting a final boss. Each player starts the game with just 3 action cards, but you do get to draw one for free from the supply each and every round, and each player will be going up against 3 threats for each of these rounds. Most of the action cards do have a cost that you have to pay in order to play that card, and you're going to be paying for that cost by spending your action points. Of course, these different cards will allow you to do all sorts of different things, but the main goal you're trying to achieve is to defeat those various threats, because any that are left over at the end of the round are going to be dealing their associated damage to you. Each of these enemies can behave a little bit different from each other, dealing different amounts of damage or having different effects, and even granting different rewards for defeating them. One thing you always get for defeating an enemy card is the card itself, because on the opposite side of that card, you're going to have an action card that you'll be able to add into your supply. Getting back to what makes the deck building of this game so unique is that you don't really have a deck that you're continually building, at least not one that you always have access to, because any of the cards that you use actually go into a discard pile, and once all the threat cards have run out, you're going to be shuffling your discard pile and then using those to form the new threats. This means that you are building up a deck, but in order to get those cards back, you have to defeat the enemy over again. Another neat thing about this is that every time you do reshuffle your discard pile into the next threat deck, you're actually going to be gaining access to the next tier of cards, allowing you to get even more powerful cards into that deck. And there are also some cards that do remain in play when you are able to play them, and these are going to grant you with some special abilities or even additional actions that you'll be able to spend on your turn. In order to win the game, you do have to defeat the final boss, and what's cool about the way that the bosses work in this game is that you're not necessarily doing all the fighting at the end of the game, and each of the bosses is going to be changing the way that the game actually plays and can even modify some of the strengths or weaknesses of the enemies. And each of the bosses can have a very specific way that you'll actually be able to deal damage to them. And if you're able to do all that before you run out of health, then you win the game. And if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked in the description down below. Also launching on the 18th, we have Piri Summoners, and this one is a competitive abstract strategy game that does also double as some decorative art, because the game is entirely made out of wood, and it also comes with this little drawer to store all the components, and the box for that drawer actually features some cut-ins that you'll be able to put all the hand-carved meeples on. This is a game where players will be managing a hand of cards and then creating the board by playing those cards and then taking their associated actions. On your turn, you'll be able to play one of the cards from your hand to an adjacent or diagonal location out on the board relative to any other card, and then you'll also be able to move your meeple onto that newly placed card. Each of the cards comes in one of 4 suits, with each of these suits using a sort of rock, paper, scissors mechanism, being stronger than a suit and also weaker than another suit. As you're playing these cards out onto the board, there's essentially two different things that you're trying to accomplish. First is just to play cards adjacent to your opponents, with the card that you're playing having a stronger suit than the card that your opponent is currently sitting on. If you're able to do that, you're going to be knocking both your opponent's meeple and the card that they're sitting on out of play, which allows you to gain a wooden coin, which is known as mana. The reason that you want those coins is because the face cards in this game do also come with a cost in order to play them. You're going to be spending those coins in order to pay that cost. But that is not the only requirement that the face cards have, because each of them are also going to feature a pattern of cards located in the bottom left corner. And if you're able to play that card adjacent to that pattern, it's actually going to allow you to eliminate all the cards that are part of that pattern other than the face card itself. And this is also the way that you win the game, because if you're able to do that 3 times before any other player, then that ends the game with you as the winner. But like I said, you do need to have those patterns out on the table in order to play these cards, so it's going to be up to you to not only play cards to knock your opponents out and get those coins, but also to create the patterns that you need in order to play your face cards. And of course, if you're interested to check this one out and learn more about the game, I will have it linked down below. Also launching on the 18th, we have Rogue Seas, and this one is a competitive game where players are racing to get their pirate ship to the legendary treasure island before any of the other players. The way this game works is that each player is going to be playing as their own asymmetrical captain, and players are all going to be starting on different ports at the beginning of the game, but then on a turn you're going to be rolling dice to determine the amount of movement points you have, and then you'll be able to spend those movement points to move along the different hexes out on the board. If you move on to an island hex, that's going to allow you to draw a loot card, which can grant you either gold or notoriety or both. But if you decide to move onto a port hex, you can actually spend the gold that you earned to either repair your ship, boost your health, or even buy stronger dice. You can also spend the notoriety here in order to hire new crew cards into your crew, which will grant you with all sorts of special effects and bonuses. There's also going to be merchant ships scattered around on the board, and players can choose to attack any of these ships when you're adjacent to them, and you'll be rolling your dice and using your crew cards in order to issue that attack. And if you're able to defeat the merchant ship, then you're going to be gaining a loot card, which, like I said, grants you with additional gold, notoriety, or both that you can be spending at a port. As I said, the goal of this game is to be the first to get to that legendary treasure island, which you can see located in the bottom right corner of the board. But in order to actually locate where that island is, your captain's first going to have to get 4 different treasure maps. There's a few different ways that you can get these maps, and you'll be getting one for every 4 merchant ships that you defeat, or every 5 islands that you visit. But players can also choose to fight the more deadly sea monsters, and these work very similar to the merchant ships, but of course are a lot stronger. And every time that you defeat one of these, that's going to be earning you a treasure map. But just like you can fight the merchant ships, you can also choose to try and defeat one of your fellow players, and if you're able to do that, you're going to be stealing one of their maps. And players can spend gold and notoriety in order to increase their strength in any of these battles, or even just try to escape. Once you do have at least 4 of these maps, you'll then have the option to sail to the treasure island. But one thing to note about this board is that there are a bunch of different spaces that when you move onto them actually deal you a certain amount of damage. And it just so happens that all the hexes around the legendary treasure island are very dangerous and also deal 15 damage just for moving into them. This means that just having those maps isn't quite enough to get you to that island, and you'll also need at least 16 health. This means that you'll have to upgrade your ship enough to be able to have that much health, but you'll also need to defend yourself while you get to that island, because any of the other players could try to attack you to lower your health, forcing you to go back to port to issue your repairs. Some really neat ideas with this one, and if you do want to learn more about it, I do have it linked in the description down below. Also launch on the 18th, we have My Town, which is a game where players are competing to breathe life back into their hometowns. The way this game works is that players are going to be taking turns rolling dice and then spending their movement points to move around the outer perimeter of the board. Wherever you land, that's going to determine the type of actions that you have available to you, and this is going to allow you to do things like construct stores, attract people to that side of the board, and eventually build a house there. This is a game that does also feature a little bit of area control, because each side of the board is actually broken up into a different region, and anytime that you're building or adding different components there of your color, that's going to be adding to your influence in that region. This grants you with certain benefits in that region, but the goal of this game is to actually build 4 houses in all 4 of the different regions. Once you're able to do that, you'll then be able to build your monument in one of those regions. If you're able to do that and then move your pawn to that region before an opponent does it first, then you win the game. And if you're interested to learn more about this one, I will have it linked in the description down below. Also launch on the 18th, we have a new expansion being added to the game, Skytear Horde, and this expansion is going to be adding a bunch of new cards and enemies and allies into the game. But the big addition here is the concept of the campaign mode, and this is going to allow you to play all sorts of different mini campaigns. You're going to be stringing 3 games together that can all be played in about 2 hours. This is going to allow you to use all your existing content in a new way, stringing together different combinations of hordes in order to create different permutations, allowing you to create all sorts of new experiences where your upgrades and decisions will carry forward between those games. If you're not familiar with how the game actually plays, this is a campaign that I did cover in the past back when it originally launched, so if you want to learn more about this one, I'll just go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now. And this is a really interesting one for a few reasons. This one's inspired by tower defense video games, but then it plays similarly to one of those head-to-head card battlers like Keyforge. The thing that really sets this apart from all those games is that this one was designed first and foremost as a solo or cooperative game, but if you are also interested in competitive, this does offer it as well in a one versus many mode. But the way that this game works is you're going to mix and match a few choices at the start of the game. You're going to be choosing a castle to defend, but then you're also going to be choosing your legendary heroes that you're going to be using to rally your troops with, and then you're going to be choosing the alliance decks that you want to include in the game. And there are a few different pre-made decks that you can choose from, but as you get more familiar with the game, you can also mix some of these decks together and create different varieties that don't come exactly pre-made out of the box. And to play the game, you're going to be going up against hordes of monsters that are swarming from a spawn gate. And you're going to be defending in 6 different lanes, and this picture outlines a little bit of what that looks like. Different monsters are going to be approaching through different lanes, and you're going to be issuing your cards out into the play area, and then any cards that are in line with another monster in that lane are going to go head to head and attack each other. But if there is not a monster in that lane, then you're going to instead attack the spawn gate that the monsters are coming from, and your goal is to try and destroy that gate. But if there's any monsters that are in a lane that you are not defending, then they're going to be able to strike your castle. And of course you lose if your castle is destroyed, or if you run out of cards. And the interesting thing about this game is that you do not draw cards every time it is your turn. Instead, you earn cards by performing different feats in the game and destroying different monsters. So you really want to keep that in mind, and you really have to manage the cards that you have and try not to lose them carelessly. And that definitely can happen because there are smaller monsters that can come out of that spawn gate, but rather than going into the typical lanes to attack you, they're going to go around the lanes and just start pilfering your castle. These monsters don't stick around too long and they'll leave on their own, but if you allow them to do that, they're going to be stealing a few cards of yours, which are a precious commodity in this game. So you might want to attack them as well to try and stop them in their tracks. If you survive long enough and you're able to take out those spawn gates, then eventually you're going to be going up against the Outsider, which is sort of a final boss in this game. And this is going to be an epic showdown where if you come out successful, you will win the game. And this is one of those games that kind of came out of nowhere for me. I wasn't keeping an eye on this game, but as I did more and more research to do this video, I just got more and more interested in this game, and everything I'm seeing from it looks really solid. And a cooperative card battler is not a game that I currently have in my collection, so there's definitely a spot for this one, and I'm really interested to learn more on the mechanisms of how you earn cards in this game, because that's something that I really haven't seen before and sounds really cool. This campaign will also be including their original Skytear game, so if you're interested in that as well, this is also a great time to jump in on that. And if you are interested in this at all, I highly recommend clicking that notify me button, because this has a really nice early bird with an entire promo deck that you'll get absolutely for free. And just a small teaser here, but the price on this one is pretty reasonable as well. And yes, you can go crazy on the deluxeification if that's what you're interested in. And launch on the 19th, we have Incubo, which is a 2-player cooperative game where one player is going to be playing as a child named Tommy, and then the other player is going to be playing as Tommy's cat. Characters are going to be trapped in a dream world as they work together to try and overcome different challenges and fight against different bosses in order to make their way back home. The game plays over 3 different rounds, with each round representing a cycle of REM sleep, and during a round, players are going to be drawing cards from the fear deck and then putting them into this board at the center of the table. Each of the cards will have 3 different sheep on them, both on Tommy's side as well as his cat's. The value on each sheep indicates the amount of courage that your character needs on their side of that card in order to overcome that fear card. And the 3 sheep on each side of the card are associated with the 3 rounds of REM sleep. So depending on which round you're in, you're going to be looking at that associated sheep. But like I said, that card's going to get slotted into the central board, and then each player is going to be rolling a die. And the value of that die indicates where you'll be able to put your token on the trackers on either side of the board. And these trackers essentially allow you to play cards for free, because each time you play a card, you're going to be moving that tracker down. And if you run out of spaces on that track, but you still need to play more cards in order to get your courage up high enough, then you're going to have to be spending time tokens. And if you run out of time tokens before you defeat the final boss, then that is the way that you lose the game. But players will be playing their cards from their own deck, adding the courage values from those cards onto any of the cards that they've already played. Whenever you play a card, you can either play it to your side of the board to help meet your courage requirements, or instead you can play it to your partner's side to try and help them. This is where the cooperative element comes into play, because each of you are going to have different requirements that you're trying to fulfill, and each of you might have a different amount of free cards that you get to play. And depending on all that and the cards that you and your partner both have in your hands, one of you might need more help than the other. What's neat about this cooperative aspect of the game is that when you play a card to your partner's side of the board, that card actually goes into their discard pile once you defeat that fear card, meaning that the deck you end up with at the end of the game can be very different from the deck that you started with. At the end of each round, players are going to be going up against a more difficult boss, and if you defeat that boss, you're going to be moving into the next round in the game. And if you're able to get through all 3 rounds and then defeat all 3 bosses in each of those rounds, then you win the game. And if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. Also on the 19th, we have Tales of the Sea, which is a competitive game where players get to play as puppy pirates. This one is a campaign that I did cover in the past, but they pulled it down and made some changes and gave it a little bit of a facelift. And this new version is going to be offering a print and play version of the game, but it's also going to be adding a few other changes as well. So if you are interested to check this one out, I will roll the previous footage for you now, but if you want to see all the changes, you can find a link to the campaign in the description down below. And as you'd expect, this is a game where players are going to be playing as canine pirates, and you might be happy to know that it does live up to its name with the inclusion of a ton of fantastic puns. This is a competitive game where each player is going to be playing as their own puppy pirate crew, and each player is going to have their own personal player board that's going to keep track of their ship and its stats, which includes its movement, its strength, its luck, and agility. All these stats can be upgraded and modified throughout the game, and you can also temporarily boost any of these stats by overworking your crew. This, of course, does make them a little bit more unhappy and can cause a mutiny as you play throughout the game. Players are going to be playing over a series of rounds, alternating their turns, and on a turn you're going to first start by determining the amount of movement that you have. Each player is going to have a base movement, but then you also have your multi-use workers, which can be placed on your shipboard to increase your overall movement stats. Players will then be spending these movement points to move around to the various islands out on the board in order to do things like find resources, items, money, cannons, and other treasures, or even to bury treasures on other islands, as long as they're not spotted by their opponent pirates. Whenever you leave an island, you can also leave one of your crew members behind in order to take control of that island. This is one of the ways that you can win the game, but it also frees up a space inside your shipboard, which can then be used to hold other items or gear that you find along the way. Other players could try to take the control of the island away from you, but in order to do that, they need to put more of their crew members on the island than what you had left behind. But of course, this wouldn't be a proper pirate game if you couldn't fire those cannons, and there are opportunities for that because there'll be various trade ships that can spawn out on the board, and players can try to attack these ships by rolling a die in combination with their stats with a push your luck mechanism to determine if they win that battle. But players can also attack each other as well with the same mechanism, and combat is one of the ways that you can win the game because this is a game that actually has 3 different win conditions. You can either defeat enough trade ships, bury enough treasure, or control enough islands, or in other words, marking your territory. Players will also want to gain an advantage over their opponents by gaining certain items or upgrading their ships, which they can do by spending a very valuable resource known as bones. And if players do find themselves in a particularly tight spot, like I said, you can overwork your crew to temporarily raise some of your stats. And the way that this works is that you're going to be spending points on your mutiny track, moving down that track, in order to temporarily pump one of your stats upward.
This does come as a trade-off because if you do move down that track, that's going to cause you to lose movement points on your turn. But if you're able to keep your crew happy and move that track all the way up, you'll actually get additional movement points. Of course, if it gets all the way to the bottom, you're going to have a full-fledged mutiny on your hands, and there will be some negative consequences you'll have to deal with. The game continues like this until one of the players is able to fulfill one of those 3 win conditions, and that player wins the game. And if you want to learn more, you can check out this campaign. I have it linked in the description below.
And launching on June 20th, we have Nightshift, which is a competitive game for 1 to 5 strip dancers. And I know the theme of this one is going to be quite divisive and people are going to have different opinions on it, but this is a real thing, which is also quite divisive. But this whole game is intended to be a little tongue-in-cheek, and the whole goal here is to try and attract the appropriate customer that you'll be able to woo and even potentially get to fall in love with you, with the whole goal of trying to drain them of as much money as possible. Each player is going to be playing as one of 5 different dancers, each with their own unique characteristics and approach to charming their customers. Players will be taking turns spending action points to move around the club, locate customers that have specific attributes that your dancer will be able to take advantage of, and then you'll be able to engage with that customer, rolling dice and then augmenting your role with your character's abilities and power cards in order to try and get your customer into a private room or even the VIP lounge. If you're able to do that, it's going to be moving you into a push your luck phase where you're going to be drawing cards and rolling your dice to perform a sequence of dance moves, which can increase the customer's interest in you, which can then convert to more time being spent with you, which of course translates to more money being spent. Of course, you don't want to spend too much time with a single customer because you do have to take your spotlight out on the stage, and whenever you do that, it's going to be gaining you to different benefits and action cards and additional tips. And the most successful dancer at the end of the game wins the game, and if you want to check this one out, it will be linked down below. Also on the 20th, we have Imperial Borders, which is a competitive game for 2 to 6 players. This one takes place back in 1815 in an alternate history. And this one is a historical war game, which is a genre that I always say I don't quite dive into quite as much. So if you do want to learn more about this one, definitely go ahead and check out Zilla Blitz because he exclusively covers this genre of games, and he will be letting you know how this game plays because he puts out a video every single month going over all the games launching that month, both on Kickstarter, Gamefound, as well as a few other platforms as well that focus exclusively on the historical war games. That being said, you know it exists, and I will have it linked down below if you do want to check it out more for yourself. And on the 21st, we have Hexplore at the Mountains of Godai, which is a new addition to the Hexplore series, which already has a ton of different games offered, and I have covered a few of them in the past, but if you're not familiar with it, all of these do work together, and you can combine any of the Hexplore systems with any of the other ones. This specific one is going to be offering a tower defense experience with a focus on different types of elements and elemental beings. I don't have too much info on how this specific version actually plays, but I'm sure it will borrow some elements from the previous iterations in the series. But the entire series does focus on combining different cards and elements together in order to build up your hero, and that will be something that's present in this version of the game as well. If you want to check this one out and learn more as more details are provided, you can check it out and I will have the link down below, and of course you can click to get notified. And that's everything I have for this week, but of course this video wouldn't be complete without a few pledge giveaways at the end here, and these are the easiest giveaways to enter ever. All you gotta do is leave a comment down below and that'll get you automatically entered in to win either of these pledges. And the first one we have to give away here is a pledge for Dark Blood, and if you're not familiar with this game, this is a game where players are all controlling their own faction of cultists. You're going to be using your actions to put your cultists out on various locations in order to gain control in that location and take the associated action there. And these actions will normally allow you to interact with the various villagers at that location, allowing you to do things like harvest them for their blood as a resource that you can spend in various ways to upgrade your cult, or even recruit them into your cults so that you have more cult members to take actions with. Or finally, you could just choose to sacrifice them by hanging them from the tree in order to earn dark favor. As I mentioned, the game offers a bunch of different ways that you can upgrade your cult, but you can even spend that dark favor in order to summon a beast or a demon of your cults out on the board. This giveaway is offered worldwide, so anyone can feel free to enter it, and this giveaway is going to be for a Dark Blood pledge. Go ahead and say anything you want in the comment section down below to get entered into this giveaway, but if you are looking for something in specific, feel free to share maybe a scary movie or book or game or any other type of content that you thought was particularly well done for the rest of us to check out. I always find that the horror genre has the widest range of stories being incredibly bad or amazingly good, but one that I would definitely recommend is to check out the Creepcast where they covered the Left-Right game. It's quite a long story and it's over a few parts, but I really did enjoy this one. I thought it had some really creative ideas and definitely some spooky parts as well. But if you're more interested in communicating with the dead rather than creating them, we also have a giveaway for Phantom Inc. Arcana, which is a team versus team party style game where a player from each team is going to be acting as the spirit for that team, trying to help their team guess a specific word. Both teams are trying to guess the same word, so they will get partial information and clues from what the other team does. So the whole strategy here is to try and get enough information from your spirit without giving away too much to your opponent team. This was my pick of the week last week, and I think this game looks like a ton of fun, and I will definitely be adding this one to my collection. This new edition is a standalone version of the game, which you can mix with the original, but it's also going to be adding some new concepts and powers as well. I actually have a cottage trip planned for next weekend, and I think this one would be a really fun game to play with everyone, so I'm hoping to try and find the original version of this game before then. But all the stores around me do seem to be sold out on this one, so I'll just have to see how it goes. But if you do want to secure yourself a copy of this game, definitely enter in this giveaway for a chance to get a Kickstarter edition of the game. And this giveaway is also going to be offered nearly everywhere, including North America, the UK, the EU, Australia, New Zealand, and Asia. Just leave a comment down below with the hashtag ink. Good luck in the giveaways, but now let's go ahead and draw the winners for last week's giveaways. And we had a ton of giveaways last week. We had a giveaway for 2GM Tactics, Bunny Boom, Propuh, KUGO, and Guns of the Old West, and these were all run over on the Discord. If you're watching this video early enough, there might actually still be some time to enter into this giveaway, and there's a ton of games we're giving away. All you gotta do is visit the giveaways channel on our Discord and then click the emoji underneath that giveaway. And we do run giveaways over on the Discord all the time, and the odds here are really, really good. And if you do want to get notified anytime that I put one of these up, just head over to the Rolls channel and click the giveaway icon, and that'll send you a notification to your Discord app anytime that I post in that channel. I do have notifications turned off by default for everything on the Discord, so you don't have to worry about getting spammed, but if there is anything that you do want to opt into, there's a bunch of different options over on the Rolls channel here. But the Discord giveaways weren't the only ones we ran last week, and we also did a giveaway on last week's video for a pledge for Agemonia, and this is an all-in pledge, so I'm super excited for whoever wins this one. And we also had another giveaway for a pledge for Neverrift. And I use this comment picker here to draw a winner, and all these extra names down here are bonus entries from my supporters over on Ko-fi. And if you do appreciate this content and you're in a position to help make these efforts a little bit more sustainable for me, I really do appreciate it, as I don't take any money or games from publishers in order to offer my content. So this is what does allow me to remain independent and do everything I do here. But I already drew the comments, so let's just go ahead and draw a winner. And we will be drawing for Agemonia first. And our winner is MG Pistol 76. Congratulations on the win here. And they say that Agemonia is one that they've been debating backing. And I'm glad to help make that decision a little bit easier for you, because all you got to do is email me at adam@shelfclutter.com and we'll get that pledge all sorted out for you. I appreciate you checking out the channel and joining in on the fun, and I hope you have a ton more fun with your new copy of Agemonia. But now let's go ahead and draw for Neverrift. So we're going to do the exact same thing here. I guess all I got to do is pick another winner. And the winner of Neverrift is James Estes from Ko-fi. So I'll reach out to you and let you know that you won a pledge here. But if you catch this before I do, feel free to email me at adam@shelfclutter.com and we'll get that all sorted out. And that is all I got this week. Not a super crazy week, which I don't mind because we have had quite a lot of games pretty much every single week over the past 2 months. Next week doesn't look too crazy either. I've only got 7 games so far, but I know that will pick up as we get more into the week. But we do already have a few heavy hitters with Odalin as well as Blood from Ludus Magnus. But honestly, a lot of times these smaller, less hyped games are the ones that end up interesting me the most. So there's always opportunity for a few surprises here, but we'll just have to wait until next week for that one. So until then, thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, keep that shelf cluttered and the table full.